Hey everybody, welcome back again to Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy, where the proof is in the singing. I'm having an absolute blast doing these isolated vocals from some of the most epic pieces of music of all time. Next up, Frank Sinatra, Fly Me to the Moon. If you guys would mind, please like and subscribe to my channel. That'd be really cool. I have a singing course. That singing course is called How to Sing Better Than Anyone Else. And you guys can find it right here at KenTamplinVocalAcademy.com, where I also have a free singing forum for you guys if you're interested in wanting to learn how to sing in different styles. If you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, it doesn't matter. I've got like 20,000 people over there. We're all talking about all this amazing information, how to sing, recording, songs, post your videos, get critiques, you name it, it's all there. But I want to dive right into Frank. Now, this is a really cool, epic piece. And without further ado, let's just dive into it. We'll talk about it. We'll do a little tutorial. We'll talk about Frank. We'll talk about the recording process. But it's going to come along for the ride. I think you're going to like this one. Here we go. Fly me to the moon.
Fly me to the moon. Let me play among the stars. And let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
Now, first of all, there are a lot of singers that have come along that have tried to emulate Frank. And by the way, Frank too is very Tony Bennett. So Tony and Frank, in fact, Tony did a record called Perfectly Frank. So that's kind of funny. There was a similar style back in this era. And there was a lot of guys that had a croonery kind of vibe to them. What made Frank really unique was he was really sassy. He wasn't, he was a man's man, you know what I mean? And you could hear his kind of East Coast vibe going on, his very Italian vibe going on. But also, in addition to that, his phrasing was extremely unique. You know, I am a do-ba-ba-da, right? So we're going to talk about some of his phrasing. He also, back then, most of these guys did this too. And again, there was a lot of great crooners I could talk about. And we have newer guys like Michael Bublé, and then we've got, Harry Connick Jr. who's done a fantastic, kind of rendition of Frank in his own really unique way. But, and then also too, what's his name? The guy from Panic at the Disco, I'll think of his name in a minute. Anyway, he started out kind of doing a crooner thing too, and then kind of shifted gears doing something I think the labels wanted to do more. Brendan Urie, I meant to say. Sorry, Brendan. But he kind of had a crooner thing early on and has shifted gears in that. But what's interesting about this is there's very little effect. And if you hear bleed from the band, I'm almost certain that's microphone bleed because they did all this stuff live in a room with an orchestra end to end, and they would pick one of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 takes, and they would go, okay, that's take. We'll use take number 7, okay, or whatever it is. So what you're hearing is you're hearing an actual orchestra in the background with Frank singing on top of it, all live. So if there's a mistake, you get a mistake. And so the uniqueness of this, and that includes a lot of bands back then. I mean, they all just recorded this stuff live. So with a view towards that, no auto-tune, no extra, overdubs, nothing, you got Frank. Check it out.
Fly me to the moon. Let me play among the stars. And let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
Okay, cool. Now, the other thing that Frank did a lot was a lot of ebb and flow of his dynamic range. So, fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars, right? So he'd go back and forth and play with the energy of the volume of his voice. Now, I'm kind of caricaturizing his voice. Let me have a little more respect, and let me just do it kind of more like he would do it. Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars, right? I know the notes aren't exact, but so there was a real cool swag. Now, in addition to all of that, he had this killer golden throat tone. We're going to listen to it one more time. Check this out.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
Great lyric.
Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
Now, I know that he watched his conductor who did, I forget his name, but he did almost all of his charts. I mean, he was with them his whole career, even down to the very end. He said, let's just do one more chart. And I think, there's a video of him saying that, and that was the last song he ever did. And then he passed shortly thereafter. But I could almost see a conductor going, fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars, right? So with a view towards that, of thinking about him watching a conductor singing with an orchestra, the orchestra kind of following Frank, because Frank did whatever Frank wanted to do, and it's from a tempo standpoint and whatnot. It was a conductor's job to sit there and try to corral Frank in to not go too far off on the phrasing of his rhythms. And you're going to see this when we put the music up. It's really interesting. But then also too, him kind of Frank following the conductor as he's going through it, right? So listen to that. Listen, you just kind of think about it.
And let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
Right? Now, by the way, let me see what spring is like on a Jupiter and Mars, right? So there was this funny comedian. He did this thing. I forget what it was, but it was an old Foreigner song, and it was what was it? It was I hope I can remember this, but it was something like if what is it? I would climb any mountain. Sail across a stormy sea. That's what it takes me, baby, to show how much you mean to me, right? So some comedian did a Foreigner song and did it if Frank were to have done it. That's not the song, but it was actually pretty funny. Oh, it was, someday you'll pay that tab, I know. That's what it was. Anyway, it was pretty funny. But that's exactly what Frank did, is he had this kind of swag about him that was just very unique. And then sometimes he'd sing right on the dotted line, right with the band. So check it out one more time. Here we go.
Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
See what I mean?
In other words, hold my hand.
Instead of hold my hand, is hold my hand, right? I was kind of on the back of the beat. And then the other thing, I know I'm adding a lot to this, but his swing in the music, because back then things would swing in percentages of how far outside of the band of the swing that you want. And he'd be really far outside the swing. Listen.
In other words, hold my hand.
Really?
In other words,
way in the back.
Baby, kiss me.
Pretty cool.
Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore.
By the way, I know this is kind of nostalgic and maybe a little too reminiscent of just, I don't want to live in the past. I'm not saying that. But wasn't this the coolest era ever? Big band. Everybody was happy, no COVID-19, no, everything was, and life was good, and it was just, people were dancing, and they were enjoying themselves, and they were together, they were very social, they didn't have their phones out glued to their face. This was just, and that, by the way, you could find bad in any era, you could find good in any era. So I'm not overselling or overstating the era. But to me, the swing era and just the romance and the hats that they wore from the 20s, 30s, 40s, the way they dressed in their suits. You look at the way people dress today, it's just ridiculous. And back then, you ever seen those pictures where they juxtapose somebody from the 20s, 30s, 40s, a guy dressed from then all suave in his suit, and this, that, whatever. And then you see some guy dressed with his pants down to his knees and, tatted, and, very different time, right? So anyway, but I don't want to over romance this, but it's pretty cool era.
You are all I long for, all I worship and adore.
Great lyrics.
In other words, please be true.
And notice his pitch is stinking spot on. And he's, please be true, right? Everything he did was just spot on. Now, it wasn't about range, and it wasn't about, killing people with, distortion or anything. It was just sexy, right? Masculine, sexy, cool.
In other words, I love you.
By the way, it's going to be a funny statement. As much as he was what kind of comes off like a gentleman's gentleman and real proper and stuff, I don't think I'd want to get Frank pissed off in an alley. I get the feeling that Frankie knows a few people, if you know what I'm talking about. I think he could probably take you out if he really wanted to. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm going to go to the next section here. Here we go. Big, long instrumental break. Here we go.
Fill my heart with song. Let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore.
Pay that tab, I know you. You're as cold as ice. Right? That's the song I was talking about. Hey, but the other thing too that was also really unique, and I heard this from several people that actually, I got a chance to work with his string section a long time ago, and so I know guys that knew him pretty well, and so he was Mr. Ad-lib. Like, he never sang this the same way twice. Ever. He would always have a different mood and a different phrasing and a different note choice. And you could really hear that here. How many people today can just, on the spot, rearrange a melody or take on a melody and be consistent every single time with it like Frank? Not very many people, man. It's pretty cool.
In other words, please be true.
True. Right, he's not real spot on his vibrato, but it's good enough. It's Frank. It's cool, right? Check it out.
In other words, I love you.
See what I mean? And by the way, he can read music really good. So actually that chart, if you listen to this, if you listen to how far the band hangs, he couldn't have hit that. I doubt he could have hit that note this spot on without having the music in front of him and reading the music. Check it out.
I love
Waiting. There we go.
you.
See what I mean? Okay, now I want to go back to the very top of this. And what I want to do is, well, I've talked about his singing, his phrasing. Now, if you notice, there's almost no reverb on this at all. And I've talked about the recording process. And I'm not going to add a ton of reverbs to it. But what I do want to do is I want to... I've recorded a lot of horns in my day. I've recorded a lot of orchestras in my day, a lot. And I've also recorded a lot of choirs, and I've had a chance to do, I lived in LA all my life, so I got a chance to get into all the rooms, whether it's the Village or Ocean Way or, Conway, like a lot of rooms I've worked out of. And, the band is in what sounds like a really good wood room, right? So you want to be really careful if you guys are ever trying to record something like this. You don't want something really bright and brassy and tinny. You want something really warm and soft to really complement the vocal. So I'm not doing this because I think this track needs it, but I did want to, before I do that, before we get there, I wanted to show you his phrasing against the music itself. So let's go ahead and do that first before I actually add the reverbs, and then that I want to show you how to warm up the sound even more and make it a little bit bigger because the band is so big. But let's listen to the phrasing against the music. Check this out.
Fly me to the moon. Let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand.
So instead of hold my hand, he's hold my hand, and I'll ba-da-da, right? He's got all this really cool, and it's really kind of his personality. He's just kind of like talk. So Joe, what do you think about them girls? I think I'm gonna go maybe warm up my martini a bit. You know, he's got that kind of thing where you feel like he's talking to you in song. Now, it's not so much that he's telling the story. Now, I'm big on, telling the story. It's more like Frank expressing himself, and the words come along for the ride. So it's kind of a twist on that. So he actually makes the song itself come alive from his personality rather than trying to dig into the lyric and have the lyric dictate to him what to say. And he was known for that because he did it his way, right? So you have this swag. Check it out.
Baby, kiss me.
So great.
Fill my heart sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true.
Okay, cool. Now that we see his swag against all that, we get a chance to really enjoy that. Here's what I would do if I was actually adding just a little bit of effect. I've created a couple buses, and I want you to listen to this alone without the track. So first I'll do the raw vocal by itself. Check it out.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
So there's already kind of a wood room in there. You can hear a row. It sounds like they recorded all in a really nice horn, wood room, right? Now, here's with my effect, what I did to it.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
All I want to do is I want to bring out more of Frank. I don't want to cover Frank up. I'm not using effect to cover anything up. Notice how subtle it is. But so we'll go back and forth between the two. Check it out.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
With?
And let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
Okay, so let's do this one more time. I'm going to go back and forth and toggle between. I'll start without it, put it in, and I'll even announce it as I go. Here we go. One more time. Without.
Fly me to the moon.
In.
Let me play among the stars.
Out.
And let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
Staying in.
In other words,
out.
Hold my hand.
Now, again, like I've talked about this a lot, there's a lot to be said for intimacy and having the vocal be really upfront and personal. So I'm not trying to do that, but what I want to show you now is when we put this in the mix, how Frank gets to dominate the track a little bit more with the band rather than the band kind of overtaking him a little bit too much. So let's do it first with the vocal without any effect and the band. Check it out.
Fly me to the moon, let me play
with effect. Here we go.
Among the stars.
Let's do it like this. 1, 2.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words,
with
hold my hand.
Stay with.
In other words, baby, kiss me.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and forth twice.
Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true.
Anyway, gang, I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it, and definitely check out my next video.
Sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words,